Trinity Force podcast. I'm Chira Jaden, Sean Chira Jaden Edwards, and I'm here with my lovely, wonderful friends that don't include Adam Ponophobia Cogswell because he couldn't make it tonight because he's a real scumbag. But anyway, I am joined by our good buddy D. Claude, who didn't know that he was going to be able to make it tonight.
Oh yeah, I'm here. I had an MS. Who am I? What am I? Episode today, but I believe it's better. So
we'll
see what happens.
A symptom, to be honest with you, until today.
It is. It depends on how many legions you have in your brain.
As he put it, his legions. What would you say? Your legions were marching against you earlier. You had some. Weird...
Yeah. I had a pun about that.
Yeah.
So
all right. Punch is with us.
Hey everybody.
Hey Punch, how you doing, buddy?
Oh, I'm fine. I'm glad the Clark could make it. I was pretty bummed out, and then my heart was just set aflutter when he said he was gonna tough through it.
And
that hits me right here.
Yeah. We would have been if we had to miss both Adam and you tonight. I don't know what we would have done other than find somebody at last minute like usual. But it is what it is. And then Days is also with us, the lovely Miss Jennifer Days Untold.
How's it going?
What's up?
Howdy. It apparently people in chat are saying, Badger, thank you for the pun. He said I'm thinking outside the box right now because apparently our faces are outside of the boxes.
All right. Well, no. All right. So
we
for
started
anybody
at 8:02. That is a record for any time Cheer has ever hosted.
Hey, we started a minute.
We started on the nose Monday.
Yeah. We had it. Well, it was last Monday, I think. Whatever the last time that Days wasn't on, we did it perfectly. And
last Wednesday?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, if for anybody who's watching this live, the reason why D. Claude's face is massive and not in the box is because we didn't know if he was going to be here tonight and somebody else's name is underneath it. So I just said, screw it. Going to throw his entire face over it because I'm not editing it in a minute and a half.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Beautiful.
So, guys, what's on the agenda to talk about tonight?
Well, let's talk about the news first. Where are we at with Patreon? We hit the 1,200 goal.
Where are we at for Patreon?
We talked about that. Yes.
I wasn't here Monday. You need to tell me about it.
All right. Speaking of Patreon, by the way, for those people who pay the Patreon amount, I think $10 a month to get the extra Champion Select podcast, the new one about Morgana is out with the top Morgana player, and it is excellent. I listened to it today. It's great. So it talks everything about Morgana. So if you paid it, go ahead, go to that special link. I'm sure you got it in your email today, so check it out. Looks like we are talking about a RP card giveaway across the network. We're giving away $100 in RP across the network. So let's see. Looks like he has a document on that we can talk about.
See, I don't know if we should say what everybody's doing or if we should tell people just to listen to these podcasts
I think
find out.
That's probably the best way to do it, especially because I don't know when this whole $100 in RP thing was decided on, and if this is something we threw together today, I'd prefer
we're not supposed to be talking about it.
I would prefer it gets actually hashed out a little. All right, there will be $100 going.
We're doing it, guys.
Yeah, it's happening.
Check it out.
I can't tell you exactly yet whether it's a secret or not, but cat's out of the bag.
Each podcast is going to have like their own special little contest going on, so it'll be different for each cast. So you should listen to each one of them. I'm not sure we'll probably announce it. I think that was his plan, that we're going to announce everybody so they got excited.
You know what?
But in the meantime, we'll do an Adam's announcement of an announcement thing.
And just for a heads up, Adam's initial idea for whatever amount we were donating on our show was to have the best pun was going to win it. So if you can come up with a better idea than that, please send it to us because Adam needs to be slapped down for that idea real quick.
Either that or he has to review all of the emails.
You know what? In fact, just send all the puns to Adam.
Yeah.
Even if you have a better idea, send puns on along with it.
Oh, please inundate him with these puns.
Twitter, we'll give you his personal address. You can mail them to him. Call him at work. Yeah.
All right. So we'll
get to the donations. So for donations, we just received $2 from our friend Thomas, who says, "Hi guys, I hope $2 is not a miserable amount to donate.
It is not.
If I would donate a noticeable sum, my wife would be very angry, and I always wanted to say, Punch, I love your voice. Now
Thanks, buddy.
Now he has a question to
Me
ask.
too.
And his question is, now let's talk business. Orianna, support, bam, talk about her. I find her successful in that role. Easy zoning plus a shield. Resistance is for my AD carry. Movement speed buff, debuff on top of that. Amazing CC at 6. Why isn't she viable? And thanks for our answer.
Now,
Viable is a strong word.
It is.
I mean, you can play anything, anywhere if you're really good at it. The problem is she's kind of outshone by everybody. She was a support candidate at one point in
Initially.
time.
Initially, when she
Yeah.
came
They
out.
intended her to be.
And even after that, people played her in that role. But the problem is, her mana costs are not negligible. Like, they're definitely noticeable while you're, especially if you're trying to poke with her. She doesn't offer a ton of CC. Like, if you look at a lot of the other support champions, they have multiple forms of CC. And even though she has like the move speed and all that, it's not really significant. And it just makes it really difficult for you to do as much peeling as you would expect for your support to do. And in terms of like a damage support, Orianna's never been, even in mid lane, her damage is a little bit inconsistent. It depends a lot on where the ball is and if you can get it on somebody and if you can get it in the right spot. And you're going to be back with your AD carry as support. So even as like the damage supports like Zyra, and I'm trying to think of who's your guy, DeClaude. Why can't I think of his
Vel'Koz.
name right now? Vel'Koz. Yeah, they still offer like a significant amount of CC before you can get to your AD carry. And in addition to that, they have like a ton of AoE, and it just they do more damage than Orianna does, and they build mainly Magic Pen as opposed to Orianna, who needs to build AP. So there's a big difference in like what they need to build and how much money they have to spend to be effective. And she's just outshone. You know, when you look at other champions with shields, you have Janna, you have Sona, you have Karma, you have Nami. I mean, well, not Nami, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of other sustained supports out there that just are more effective in what she does than she is. But you know, especially if you're good at her, especially at lower levels, and you want to keep playing her, then play her because she's fun and that's what you like to do. But at some level, she's going to be, it's just like any other thing that's not necessarily meta, or, you know, it's for a reason. They definitely have drawbacks, and eventually people are going to start playing and figuring out those drawbacks, and they're going to punish you for them.
There is a diminishing returns on like not typically meta or not usually seen picks, whereas the players that you're playing against get better, the cheesy stuff or the comfort picks that don't necessarily belong in a certain role don't pay off as much if people know how to fight them. Other issue with Orianna, going back to the mana thing, a lot of her power and a lot of the utility that comes with her kit comes from chaining QW or EW. So like if you're trying to speed somebody up right on top of them, you either have the ball on yourself and you're right next to them and you speed them up by pressing W, or you're casting your shield on somebody to speed them up, or you're throwing your Q at somebody else, like an enemy, to do extra damage and slow them down. And again, that's a significant amount of mana, and you're almost you're having to use up 2 spells to get off your full effectiveness. If you don't have the money from free farming, you typically don't have the mana to just be able to cast those spells willy-nilly. So like unless you're stealing a bunch of CS as a support, or you're just pulling in kills left and right, and Orianna's damage early isn't like that crazy necessarily,
Right.
that's much harder to do. It's one of those situations where Annie uses less mana for an equivalent amount of damage or more damage early game as Orianna. Yes, she has less utility, but she's ooming herself in 5 abilities by using that utility.
Yeah, and someone mentioned like she does have 2 CCs, but the slow is negligible. It's really not going to be like a huge determination in whether or not someone reaches your ADC. And it's difficult for you to shield your AD carry and slow the enemy at the same time. You have to count on them being pretty close together, which is already a dangerous situation for ADC to begin with. And your ult is much better utilized if you can get like 3 or 4 people in it. Like that's what Orianna mains look for when they use their ult. And a lot of times if you're peeling for ADC, you may be peeling 1 or 2 people off. So it just isn't as great of a CC as the other supports. It's not saying that, okay, she doesn't have any utility. She definitely does. She's a utility mid. But her utility doesn't compare to the other champions. And you have to, on Ori to be effective, you have to build mana, you have to build CDR, and you have to build, CDR is not a big deal. Supports typically get that anyway. And you have to build AP to get what you want out of her. And that's a lot of items for a support to build.
Right, but if you really enjoy playing Orianna, and you insist on picking her into the support role, that's fine, because I think she outshines some other mages in that role as well, and some other off-meta picks, because she does have something she can do to affect your carry.
She actually brings utility.
She can bring some kind of utility. So because she has that in her kit, even though like Daze was saying, there's so much you have to build in order to make it effective, but you can still make it work. If you really love playing Orianna, that's what you play. You play this game to have fun. And if you're in the support role and you're Orianna, if you're trying to climb the rank ladder, people have climbed the rank ladder doing crazier crap.
A lot of things.
Yeah, exclusively one champion, etc. So if that's what you like, excellent. Then maybe you can make an awesome name for yourself, and then Daze will be asking you on her show to talk about Orianna, right. for the Patreon podcast. But
as soon as we read this question, I just wanted to jump right into talking about how Orianna is bad support, and I agree with everything that's been said. And then I thought about it, and I thought, I haven't actually seen an Orianna support, and I thought about the potential that Zony potential. Yes, it costs a lot of mana, but I mean, if people can find a way around that.
It costs all the mana, but the difference is if you had, if she didn't have those mana issues, she's already, at a certain point, she's been the safest mid laner to play, and she can farm like crazy, that if you moved more power for her to be better at support, it would also translate to her being just
a better mid laner.
You would be dealing with an Orianna that is chucking a ball at you the entire time you're in lane with her, and there's nothing you could do about it if she didn't have mana issues. And that would be a problem.
And Thomas, she
doesn't have a lot of base damage. Like she doesn't hit extremely hard early. And like Chair said earlier, you have to use 2 spells you have to get the ball near somebody and use your spell. That mana adds up.
I think that's the biggest problem.
A huge gate between mid and support is mana cost.
Yes.
So that's like a huge barrier that you have to overcome. And if you're using a huge amount of mana cost and you don't have a ton of base damage, then it's difficult. I mean, she has decent auto attack range. She has a great auto attack. So if you were to poke with that, that's great. Her passive helps a lot. She has a lot of great things going for her. She's just outshone by other supports. They're just more ideal supports. So if you want to play her, I mean, there's a lot of mids that you can technically take a bot. And, sometimes it takes some, people experimenting with that to really show, what makes it shine, like when Morgana first came down or Annie first came down. But Ori's been played down there. So she was one of those people that people have tried and tried and tried, and I've played her, and there are certain things that make her difficult, not impossible, but more difficult in that role than other champions.
That's a good point. Because she was expected to start support when she was released, everyone played her there and was like, you know what, she's not really as good as these other champions here. Let me play her mid, and then she's actually pretty fun mid.
It's kind of the flip side of. It's sort of a similar thing with Lulu. This champion's supposed to be support, but she's so good at everything else. We've seen her mid, we've seen her top. We still see her top every once in a while.
Right. They tried to tweak her back to support.
Right.
I tried to make her ADC once. It kind of worked.
I've done that.
Pixar didn't happen.
Another issue is that her auto attack range is, it's. I would say that it's shorter than a lot of other champions that are going to end up in that lane with her, and a support in the early game. Yes, you can build up the damage from her passive with the auto attack if you have a longer range on somebody else, but say you're playing against a Caitlyn or somebody like that, they're going to be able to take massive pot shots at you, and you're extremely squishy early as well.
Honestly, if you are going to put her bot, I would recommend you playing her like some mid players do, and like you do Janna, if you play Janna support. and you take that shield early and you auto attack and you go in and you auto attack because her auto attacks do hurt. And there's a lot of people who do that even in mid lane where they'll take their shield and they'll just start whacking you away auto attacks early and nobody expects the damage. So if you're going to do that, I would recommend shielding yourself and using the auto attacks. But it's kind of like the Janna situation where if you use that shield, then your ADC is very vulnerable and you have to be careful. So there's a lot to balance with her if you're going to do it. But it's possible, and so it depends on how much you love her and how much you love her in that role. And if you really like Orianna, I highly suggest playing her mid a lot too, because she's always going to be viable mid. She's always going to be safe mid.
Right.
She's always going to be good mid. And she always has utility to offer your team. So even if you get behind, you have something to offer your team. So play her mid also, because if you continue to play her support, it's always great to be able to swap roles if you're needed to.
And she has a game-changing ult if you can land it on enough people.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, thanks, Thomas. We appreciate the $2 donation, and we hope our answer was sufficient. Moving on to the next donator, Trenton donated $5. He says, "Hey guys, I love the podcast." And he basically has a discussion question where he asks, "Why does Riot hate Magic Resist? I play a lot of tank champions, and it is easy to hit around 150 to 200 armor. This, I'm told, right at the threshold of diminishing returns for resistances. Yet it seems that when I try to build Magic Resist, it's harder to hit that 150 to 200 mark. As I was driving and thinking of this, it seemed to be that more Magic Pen items, there are more Magic Pen items as opposed to Armor Pen items, and Last Whisper is the main one for AD, but AP champions have Void Staff, Liandry's Torment, and Pen Boots. Just wanted to throw that out there for the mailbag episode and keep up the good work. Much love."
There's a huge difference between AP damage and AD damage in the way that it's calculated. AP damage is basically you have your AP and you have pen, and that's what you have. But in terms of your AD, you have to add attack speed onto that also. So you can improve your attack speed, you can improve your overall DPS by also including your attack speed.
And
so
critical strike.
Right. So and crit strike. So there is significantly more ways to get AD damage onto your champion than there are ways to get AP onto your champion. And if you look, a lot of the AP, there are a ton, how many AD items where they offer so many different combinations of things. And your AP selection is slightly narrower, and they all tend to be they either offer you cooldown, or they offer you mana, or they offer you
More AP.
More AP. There's not a whole lot of different combinations that you can do to maximize that damage. So yes, there are technically less magic resist items in the game, but there is technically less magic AP damage in the game. You can actually outscale as an AD, and that's one of the reasons AD carries are so good in the game and why they're so important on your late game team, because you build AD, which increases, and then you build pen, and then you multiplicatively, that was completely said wrong, but you know what I mean. That gets increased
It all ties together.
Significantly by your attack speed. So it compounds in a very different way than your AP does, and that's part of the reason.
Yeah, and I think they compensate a little bit with that because they have spell shields. They have things that can block entire spells completely, but you can't block all the AD damage unless it's from a spell.
Yeah,
and they've taken out a lot of the blocks and a lot of the things like that used to block auto attacks and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
right.
yeah,
So,
dodge.
right,
Oh, man, dodge is a nightmare. But yeah, in general, AD is usually more sustained, as you were talking about with AD carries, whereas AP damage, again, in general, is more bursty or gated by cooldowns, right? A spellcaster has to wait for the cooldowns to come back up before they can issue more damage out, whereas AD carry is just attacking nonstop.
Right, and that's the other thing with AP versus AD, where health is more effective versus burst, and resistances are more effective versus sustained damage. So that's another thing. That's why a lot of the AP items also offer health with them, or a significant amount of health with them.
And there's also a couple of magic resist defensive items that can kind of shut down a spellcaster's rotation. And I'm thinking of Banshee's Veil and Quicksilver Sash, where if you've got a mage that relies on their rotation to take somebody down, and a Banshee's Veil blocks one of those, then that mage's their damage rotation is highly reduced. They become much less effective. Similar case with Quicksilver Sash. If they're relying on a pick, CC ability that they have, like a Morgana binding, and then somebody's able to instantly get rid of that, then the rotation is shot. ADs in general don't have to. Now they have attack speed reduction items, but it doesn't shut them down nearly as hard as Banshee's Veil and Quicksilver Sash would for a caster.
Another thing is that I can't tell you how many times I'm in a game and I'm like, man, I wish I had a locket for AD. Like, you have that Aegis gives everybody in your team magic resist, or everybody within a certain area. Like, you don't have something available to you like that on the AD side. In addition to the Aegis Shield, which is mainly a prevention for burst, which again, a lot of your AP casters are burst champions. So there's a lot that helps you against AP champions. The thing you have to remember is effective health. You need to have enough health to manage your MR, and you need to have enough MR to take advantage of your health. So that's going to be a huge thing. So yeah.
Yep, and when in doubt, just build health. Everything is effective health. So, but Trenton, to your question, I think everybody touched on it. It's pretty right. I think Riot did a pretty good job balancing how you build against each. And if you could build the same amount of MR as you can armor right now, no one would play a caster because there wouldn't be burst casters. You'd be able to. You can already suck everything one ability up with a Banshee Veil. You can knock off all effects with a Quicksilver Sash. You can do all these things to help. And AP is still viable, mainly because you can't stack it as high.
And don't forget the other really big thing, which a lot of people don't think of, is the first thing we talked about, which is AD stats work multiplicatively and AP does not.
Right.
So that's a huge difference in damage potential.
Absolutely, yeah. So hopefully that answered your question, capital of New Jersey.
So thank you again to our donators.
Appreciate the donation.
Again, anybody who wants their question answered at the beginning of the show, throw a little bit of money our way and you'll get that taken care of quickly. Moving on to the big topic of the night, I guess the going along with our title tonight, the main topic tonight is when to engage versus when to peel. Who wants to take it away?
I can start with an introduction in that it's funny that Adam really wanted to talk about this because he's the one that brought it up to us first, and how he wanted to explain to people, or he wanted to talk about the topic of how your role in a team fight or a game might change over time. And of course, he's not here to talk about that. But in general, what he wanted to bring up was the idea of, so if you're a support, and I think that was his idea, was that this mainly applies to supports.
Right.
You may have a specific role in the bot lane, right? You may be an aggressive support looking to dive and all in the bot lane. But that may not translate well into the mid game when you start team fighting for various reasons. This is a pretty specific, these are pretty specific, I can't talk. Specific scenarios that we were talking about before the podcast started, where, team comps really heavily factor into this. You could be playing Leon in the bot lane, and you could engage all in during the laning phase and in the mid game. Or you could be engaging in the bot lane, and then mid game rolls around, and it turns out that they've got, I don't know, what would you say, multiple tanks or heavy disengage like a Zyra, and diving into the back lines isn't good for you. You're better off peeling Fury Carry.
Or they have like two people who can easily dive to a backline. So, for example, somebody like Nocturne, who's just going to immediately get to your AD carry or your AP carry.
Or Rengar. Yeah, you might want to babysit.
Rengar is solid too, yeah. Somebody who can just instantly gap close to your high priority targets and
you have to know your
enemies.
Fight. You have to know their strengths as well, what they're going to try to do.
And I also really like how you brought up Leona for this, because I think she's the poster child for
both.
For both of these sort of things, because I
agree.
I know I don't play much support, but when I do, I like to pick up Leona, and It's mostly because I feel like I can't really screw up too much on Leona, and part of that is because and when I didn't know how to play Leona at first, it was like I should just engage all the time because I can and I have nothing to be afraid of. But that turns out to be not the case, because too often you would go into engage and then it would be a jungler ganking you, and it'd be a 3-on-2 and they'd just run past you because you aren't killing 3 people, and they'd murder your AD carry, and then maybe you get out, maybe you die, and it's a 2 for nothing or a 1 for nothing or whatever. But yeah, Leona can do it all, so I really, really like that you brought her up for this.
I think that what he was trying to get at, because this, usually if we were to get a question in like this, the first thing Adam would say was, this is such a situational question. Mm-hmm. Because it all depends on how your game is going, what your champions are on your team, what the enemy team is like, who has cooldowns up. Like, there's a million things that have to go into answering this question. But I think what he really wanted us to focus on is that you have to think through what you're doing and be aware that your role could change throughout the game. Like, there may be times that it doesn't. Like, if you're playing support Leona or support Annie, and you have an opportunity for a 5-man stun, and you're like, oh no, T4 said that I should just stand back here, then, you have to, don't do that. You have to take into consideration what's going on in your game and things like that. So it's not a rule, but you have to be prepared to, you don't always have to feel like you need to be the one to start the fight. Like, we're huge proponents of engaging. Like, if you learn how to initiate well, you will rise quickly. Mm-hmm. Because that's one of the most common things that are messed up in lower levels, and people have no idea how to react. So a lot of times it's like the first team to engage wins the fight. So if you learn how to initiate and to initiate properly and to communicate well, it'll be great for you. Like, we're huge proponents of that. But you do need to be aware of your role on the team and if it shifts throughout the game. So, like, if your AD carry is fed, then you're Leona, and there's another initiate on your team, there is no reason, really, for you to be looking to initiate first, unless you happen to catch the team out and you get a really good stun.
Right.
But, like, your job at that point is to completely make sure that your AD's carry stays alive for as long as possible. But if it's reversed, like, if your AD carry is like 0-12, and their ADC is like 6-1, then by all means go in and help your front line kill that AD carry.
Try and lock down their high priority target as quickly and effectively as you can.
It's a huge game of asking yourself what, why, looking at items, looking at scores. Like, hit tab as often as you can. Like, it's huge. It's so important.
I like how you brought up Annie, because there are certain champions who have greater strengths initiating than they do peeling. For example, Annie is more of an initiator. Braum is more of the peel. Braum is designed to sit back and protect somebody, whereas Annie is designed to jump in and with their big fiery bear and kill everybody. So, know the champion, know your role, and shut your mouth. And also, but I like what you said, because if you're carry, why protect a carry who's useless? If
I
that
feel
carry
bad when I die.
Well, if that carry's not fighting, if they're 0-12 and they're really scared and they don't actually auto attack when they're in there, then yeah, your strength is your best defense, good offense probably can do.
And if they say something about you not peeling, then just communicate. Be like, I got you, but the best way to keep you alive is to kill so and so, or like so and so is incredibly fed. Once we get them taken care of, I'll come back for you or something. Or anything. Even if you just tell them to run the opposite direction and let your front line chase them, if they're not doing any damage anyway, let them run around the map. Who cares? And it's more important that you lock down the enemy.
And this isn't anything that's necessarily isolated, because we brought up mostly support champions right now, and I say support champions broadly since Annie is easily played mid, but we've mostly brought up support champions.
Support.
Whereas, and yes, this champion isn't necessarily popular in the meta right now and is at a weak point, but Elise was a really good example about this when she was still really strong, and that an incredibly powerful champion in the early game and saw a lot of kills, but as soon as her mid-game power spike started to wane, you see this champion stop fulfilling that I'm going to dive you sort of role and become more of a CDR peel bot with Cocoon, or trying to catch things out and maybe engaging onto the high priority targets if they're isolated or able like to finish them off with a nice WQ. So I mean, it really depends on what champion you're playing, kind of where your strengths throughout the game are. If you're more powerful in the early game, yeah, you might want to engage more in the early game so that you can use that power to help transition fights into into a productive wins. That way you can continue to take more objectives off it. Whereas if you're playing Leona and you can't necessarily engage, or engaging is going to end up with somebody on your team dying, why keep engaging when you have two hard CCs that are incredibly powerful at getting an enemy target off your high priority target, like your high priority ally?
And no one's saying that you can't change your mind mid-fight.
Right.
Like, I can't tell you, I don't play top a lot, but I do play it. And if I'm playing Renekton and I go in and I start diving the back line and I see people jumping on my carry, there's nothing wrong with turning around and peeling for your carry and making sure they stay alive.
Dice back.
Or support, like if you're playing Annie or Leona or something, there's no reason to say you can't blow Tibbers, use 3 skills, and then walk back and stun whoever's with your AD carry, or Leona, use your 5-man ult, try to get that, and then queue back and take care of your carry. Your role can shift throughout the fight. The biggest thing is being aware of what's going on around you and being able to have enough experience and knowledge to be able to make those split-second decisions, because League is nothing but split-second decision after decision after decision.
And I think lower level players too also tend to see this game more as like X champion does this and that, and it's really, really black and white in what they're supposed to do, whereas it's all gray. It's just your perception of what that champion has to do is skewed based on certain things that you've seen. So I like what Badger has said in the chat here. Be the hero that your team needs. So if you run into a situation where your team doesn't have somebody to peel for your AD carry who's even or doing well, but you have the ability to do that, even if you are top lane, let's say you're not support, let's say you're even mid lane, you're playing that Orianna and they have 2 champions that are going to be diving onto your carry. Why not QW and then potentially ult them off your carry and watch as they go to half health and your carry ends up, your AD carry ends up picking up those 2 kills. That changes the game as much as getting that good engage off if you're able to remove 2 of the 5 pieces of the enemy team's puzzle.
Another good way to identify.
Oh, go ahead.
Go on, Punch.
Another good way to identify how your role is changing, and we've danced around this a lot, but I don't think we've actually come out and just said it, is that you should pay attention to how previous team fights have gone. You need to, pay attention to how they play out and what happens and how you anticipate that's going to play into the next team fight. I have an example of when I was playing top lane and my role was switched. I was playing Kennen in the top lane. And the first few team fights, I dived the back line, as Kennen does, and killed everybody, and it was great. But as the game went on, those fights, and people got tankier, those fights kind of got spread out, and they would end up diving our back line, I would dive their back line, but their back line would survive, and mine wouldn't. So I had to change my role. I had to stay with my carries and ult to peel for them, which is, it's just something that I picked up just by, noticing a trend throughout the course of the game, throughout each team fight. It's like, okay, the game is changing.
That's a really
I have to
good
change what I'm
point.
doing.
That's the difference between, I guess, lower level and higher level players. You recognize the need to change instead of just blindly dive into the back line like I usually do.
Yeah.
So
It's really
I
fun
notice
to
I
dive
do
the
that
back
too.
line.
I just get used to it. I'm like, okay, I'm initiating, and here's my opportunity. Boom, Leona R, and then all of a sudden a Rengar eats my AD carry, and I'm like, oh, oops,
Whoops.
my bad.
Nissia in chat brought up a really good point too, where it also, a lot of champions and a lot of roles vary significantly between team play or solo queue. So especially in the jungle role, it's a huge difference. Like he was mentioning, Udyr in competitive play mainly is used as bear stance, and he will peel for the carry and peel for the carry and peel for the carry, as opposed to if you watch Trick 2G or Cheer play, and it's all about like
what can I do to carry the game on my own, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. And the jungle role as a whole is significantly different in ranked 5s as it is in solo queue, where you have less of a I need to carry this game mentality and more of a most of them transition into peelers late game in general. It's not just Udyr, but a lot of the champions that you see playing jungle in ranked 5s or competitive transition into that peel role later for the carries because they're such high priority targets and people can trust their team a little bit more and things like that.
So yeah, there you go. I mean, I think that's a pretty solid way to discuss engage versus peel. It's super situational, and recognizing which situations are appropriate to do either pays
and
off.
The champions you have.
Yeah, it pays off like crazy once you kind of know what you're doing. And it also helps because your understanding of the game, you can kind of judge to see a greater understanding as you learn which situations you should be doing certain things in. So to help you step your game up for, future performances.
Be prepared to switch.
Oh, yeah. Again, don't fall into a rut of thinking that you have to do this because you are X champion or your X role. Mm-hmm. This game is all about being malleable and being able to deal with various situations. And the people who are more adaptable and can solve problems are going to be the ones that typically perform better on the whole.
And you don't know your play style.
Absolutely.
Know how you play. I know Daze is pretty aggressive with Zona. She's an aggressive player. So she generally initiates and it works out. But she also knows when she has to peel if things are going really sour. So just know your champion, know the abilities you have, and know what you need to do. If you're angry at your AD carry because he was yelling at you, put that all aside, mute him, whatever. Protect him still if you have to. If they got the Rengu and you got the Alistar, just punt them away as soon as he jumps in. It's frustrating as hell as a Rengar player
right.
when I do that, and then the Alistar's right on my case, headbutting me out of there. It's like, well, there goes my ult, Hopefully I landed in a bush so I can jump right back out, So I think we covered that one.
Yeah,
pretty good. Was that a particular user, or is that just
no? That was Adam
saying, "Hey guys, talk about this."
Adam throwing stuff our way because he's worried about us trying to figure out stuff to talk about when clearly we can talk about anything. Anyway, moving on to the mailbag to get to more listener questions. Darius writes in, "I'm trying to get out of bronze, but I want to get to diamond, so I have a long road ahead of me. What are some resources that I can use to help me improve? I'm a jungler main this season, but I can't seem to carry the game. I usually pick up 5 to 7 kills early with 1 to 2 deaths and then fall off for multiple reasons." And he lists a bunch of reasons, such as somebody feeds, gets counter ganked, towers lost, and losing pressure. Anyway, I'm clearly doing a lot of things wrong to be losing on a losing streak in Bronze 4, where I feel both my team and the enemy team tend to be idiots, including myself, I guess, because I can't even win, even if I have a really good KDA in that particular game.
It feels like you are struggling, like you have the right mentality and then you fall off of it a little bit. Like you're acknowledging that you're probably part of the problem. You're acknowledging that you are clearly doing a lot of things wrong. And those are great things. But then you're like trying to give yourself like a little like leeway where you're like, well, my team sucks. And unfortunately, like you are where you are because you deserve to be there. And unfortunately in Bronze 4, your team mates are going to also have a lot of problems that just like you have a lot of problems. So you're going to have to learn to carry the games on your own. And I know how you feel, like DeClaude put in here, like this is Dave's story. It really was. Like I started in Bronze. Actually, I started in like Bronze 2 and I fell to Bronze 4 in case it didn't get worse as it was. And it's a lot. It takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of humility to just say, okay, I'm really bad. Someone teach me how to play this game, or I need to change how I'm playing. And it's not easy to do. Like, it's not something that I immediately was like, oh, okay, I'm bad. I know I'm bad. Like, I had every excuse in the book. Like, I play support because I was an ADC main and blamed my support and was like, I can do better than them. So everybody has those times when they tend to blame everybody else. And you need to just push those away and focus just on you. So you need to, like, record your replays. Go to Battle Arena, Bronze Boot Camp.
Yeah.
You want to listen to the Four Wards podcast. You want to, if you are able, subscribe to Patreon so you can get the one-on-one coaching, things like that. Have somebody that's better than you look at your replays and see if they can point out different things.
Have a higher level friend watch you and try to point out what you're doing.
Right,
different.
or if you're in bot lane, have them lane with you. If you're in mid lane, have them play jungle, see if they can notice things. Or if you add any one of us in in League, we will all, except for Adam, we will all add you, and you can just ask us questions. Or if you get frustrated with something, we can help calm you down and get you back on the right track. There are a lot of resources if you look around. I'm trying to think of some.
We have that Patreon tier where we actually go in depth with the replays.
Yeah.
Taking a lot of time
really
out.
good. And I think we post a lot of them. And I know Battle Arena and Bronze Boot Camp post on the T-Force podcast channel.
And
on
you
YouTube.
have a thick skin.
You have guys like Horse Doctor who provide free coaching
Right.
and other
Have-
stuff.
have a thick
Horse
skin.
Doctor does really good things. There's a trying to find it. If you look up UNSWLOLSOC on YouTube, they have like hour-long guides to each role. They're really good. Look up, what's his name? Last Shadow 9. He's a challenge. I mean, he's an LCS coach. He has some coachings up there where he's coaching like challenger or masters or diamond level players, and he's like, "You're bad at this game. You don't understand the basics." And it helps you a little bit go, okay, well, I guess I don't know everything either. And there's a lot of resources for you. And if you add me on League, I'll give you a ton of my resources because I've put together a lot of them. But any one of us can help you. The community's great. Like, we have so many resources for you in-house to help you. But if you look around, you can find them on just within the League community as well.
Or just show up in our TeamSpeak too and just ask somebody where you can find help, and I guarantee they'll point you towards one of us.
You know what? Getting out of bronze might not just be these are great resources. These are teach you about the game, learn all the ins and outs of the games, but you're going to hold yourself back if you're not mentally prepared.
Most definitely.
Right.
So, we've had episodes with Weldon Green, Chris Alphanar. They're psychologists. Psychiatrists?
It's psychologists.
Psy people.
Or
brain
sports
people.
psychologists, sports
Sports
psychologists,
psychologists,
whatever you want to
who
call them.
talk about, yeah, exactly. So if you mentally prepare yourself, then the rest should come easy. As
The
long
Playing
as,
to Win episode is really
Right.
good.
I also
Like, getting over ranked anxiety is great.
I also want to pick apart a little
Right.
bit of what he said too, coming from like a jungle perspective. He brings up that he is constantly picking up 5 to 7 kills early with low deaths. And my first thought when seeing something like that is like, what is the timeline that you consider early that you're picking up 5 to 7 kills? Because if you're picking up 5 to 7 kills in the first 20, 25 minutes,
You're in bronze, yeah.
and you're not using those kills that you have to like, oh, hey, you just killed top laner or you killed the mid laner, and you're not using those kills that you have to take turrets or apply pressure, you're not doing anything with those advantages that you're building.
Yes.
If you have
Objectives are
five,
very, very important.
if you
not
have
just kills.
5 to 7 kills and you're getting counter jungled constantly, like counter jungled enough to where you can't do anything with that many kills, because if the enemy, like if you're up 5 kills on the enemy jungler, I don't really see that many enemy junglers 1v1ing you in a situation unless it turns out like the mid laner and the jungler are roaming and they catch you because you're not paying attention. And then even still, if you had 5 to 7 kills, then you should be warded because you have the money to buy wards. Or you should be warding the map so that you know where they're
Right.
at, so you can warn other people. Like,
The fact that he brings up the kills makes me feel like you're too focused on KDA in a
Yeah.
sense. And I think that's easy for a lot of people to fall into. It's like, oh, my KDA is so good, or am I not winning more? I mean, there's just so much more that goes into the game than just KDA and kills, right? I mean, you
The
want to
way
take
that
advantage.
you- Yeah,
Sorry, but
absolutely.
if you want to take somebody down, you want to take advantage of that. If you take down the mid laner, you want to push down the mid tower. You want to get objectives after kills. You want to take advantage of map pressure. If you take out the enemy jungler, you've got free reign to his jungle. Put some wards down in there, or counter jungle him. Take dragon because he's not going to be able to contest it. You gotta focus on more than just a kill.
ward
Focus
for
on
your
objectives, focus
laners
on
that are
wards.
doing well. Like if you know your mid laner's doing pretty solid, throw up a couple wards so that they'll know if the enemy jungler is going to come towards them and try to get that shutdown money. Like, there are tons of things that you can do picking up early kills that, as long as you can't always guarantee that buying that ward will keep one of your laners from dying, but the difference between dropping that ward and having the chance that it'll keep your mid laner from dying is way better than not doing it and them dying.
Right. A way that you can use KDA, it shouldn't be like, oh, I did so great, I should have won. If you're consistently going very high kills, very low deaths, and losing, you're probably not taking advantage of your of your early lead, like they mentioned. You know, it should be objective. CS is the most important thing in a game, then objectives, then kills. But if you are like really low kills, high deaths, then you know you're dying too much, and it just a lot of times the dying less will help you. So that's how you should use KDA. But it's just an indication of possibly where there was a problem. It's not an indication of necessarily how well you did in that game. Because if you got 7 kills and 1 death, you could have still had a terrible game in terms of like the actual what you contributed to the game.
Yeah, kills create opportunities for you.
Yeah.
It's a good way to look at it. You take somebody off the map, then you outnumber the enemy. You've got pretty much the just did a brain fart. You've got the upper hand, let's say, on any objective you want. Because
there's a lot of them.
5v4. Take your pick.
Yeah, well, you know, if you're dumping all, but also if you get that kill, you know, because you're in the back line, whatever the case may be, you know, if Leona, if she dare E us, then you kill her. You know, you kill her because she comes in with her Zenith Blade. She's a target of opportunity, great. But if you lost your AD carry and jungler while you were killing that tank, sure, you got a kill, and maybe you ran away, but they got 2 kills, and that's probably why they're winning the game. You know, take stock of that. Look on your targets that you are killing. Targets of opportunity are big, because if they put themselves out there, go ahead, take it. If they're saying, hey, kill me, go ahead. But be a little wary, too. In Bronze, I don't think you have to worry about it, because unless you're getting smurfed pretty hard. But your KD, it's also, are you getting in the fight enough? Are you fighting enough, or are you just getting your kill running away? You know, what's the case right there? You have to analyze your. I think a good resource for you is to have someone take a look at your games and see why. Because if you have a positive KDA, you should be, and you're right to think that you should be carrying the games. You should be contributing to the fights in a good way. So if you're losing most of your games, you're the common denominator in every single one of your games, by the way. If you're losing most of your games, yet you have a positive KDA in most of your games, like Daves was saying, take a look at the other aspects. Take a look at your objective control, wards, etc., etc. So look inwardly, and please have a thick skin if someone does review your games. Like we have the casters for the Bronze Bootcamp. That's a very great resource for you to get out of Bronze. Listen to what they say, but take it with a grain of salt. You know, they're going to say, oh, you should have done this, and it can weigh on you. I've had people talk
Nobody
to me like
likes hearing negative stuff about themselves.
But at the end of the day, they're trying to help you.
Yeah.
The best way to improve somebody is to give
anything.
them positive too. But you're not going to get that with BBC.
Right. Well, you
can't
really good. Fix anything if you don't know what's wrong. Like, the first step to fixing any problem is admitting that there's a problem. And if you don't know what you're doing wrong, take it from me, like, you're not going to get any better, because you're going to feel like you're doing everything right. And a lot of times when you're in Bronze, you don't, like you even said, you're not sure where you're going wrong. So a lot of times when someone identifies for that, you can fix it really easy. But a really good base point to look at is if you look at LCS or any competitive league, if they get a kill, they almost always take an objective. Like, they turn that into something. Now look at every time you guys get a kill. Like, do you ping your team? Do you try to take something? Do you try to counter jungle? Do you try to take a tower? Like, just use that as your base point. Like, every time you get a kill, you should try to get something. You may not always get something, but you should attempt to.
Look at the Korean War. The Americans against the Chinese sent their forces during the Korean War against the Americans. They just sent tons, enough to where we overheated.
When we got
our,
too close to their river and they started just scaring us with people.
You know what? Send them all in. We had a great KDA, but we still lost that battle there. So it's all about objectives. The people to kill are just kind of, they're in the way to get you to your objectives, to kill the turrets, to kill their base. That's still what you're trying to do. If you're sitting over here just killing all the people, and then their turrets are still alive, and they're just getting a turret here and there, you're going to lose the game, because you're not focusing on the right objective, which isn't just to get kills.
KDA is the means to an end, not the end.
Right. KDA it's a good measure. It's, if I have a good KDA, I should probably be winning. So if you're not, then you have to reevaluate your objective control.
I love
That's
how
pretty
I'm,
much it.
I'm
Cool.
starting to school people in history in the middle of Twitch chat, which I don't know why I'm even doing that right now. So, to the next question we will go. Cryptical Gravy asks, he says he has a question about builds on Jungle Rengar. My friend has recently switched his main to Jungle Rengar. Yesterday I noticed about 50% of the time he won't even build a smite item. Smite him, he has in parentheses. The other half of the time he will only build a Ranger's Trailblazer with no follow-up on the enchant. Today I suggested he build Ranger's Trailblazer and then build all the path items for Warrior, and then swap Rangers to Stalker's Blade and finish out Stalker's Blade. And Stalker's Blade into Warrior, that is. He said that based on some LCS level builds, he had seen that Rengar doesn't need his jungle smite him, and that it was even possible. It was sometimes a hindrance. Jungle smitems, the Cryptical Gravy said that jungle smitems are always a good buy, both for the added utility it can give your smite, plus the gold efficiency of the stats that you receive from it.
I like where he
Thoughts?
gives us the full conversation there.
Right.
The back and forth.
The back and forth. So
He said this, and I replied with this, and then he had some rationale over here, and then I replied with, yeah, that was good. But I have no idea how to build Rengar, so I can't help you.
I do know that there is a way for you to build him where you start Doran's Blade. Isn't that correct?
yeah.
Like you can do that, but I guess that depends. Like how I would advise it would depend how comfortable you are on Rengar, because I'm pretty sure that's so that you can get some really early kills.
That used to be pretty common, and I haven't really played a crazy amount of Rengar recently, but I mean, I'm on pro builds right now and I'm looking at it and I'm seeing the majority of people are finishing their jungle item into warriors, typically going straight, like wards straight into, they'll get machete, pots, wards as they need it, and then they'll go straight into the warrior enchant trailblazer. And you know, it's a situation when I used to play Rengar a lot. I used to love getting Trailblazer on him, even though you're not getting the mana out of smiting certain things, just because it was good for his wave clear throughout the jungle, because the quicker you can get through the jungle, the quicker stuff's dying in the jungle. That extra amount of health that you get, you just kind of roll through, and you have the health to be able to gank. You have the quick clear to try and get a level up to get out there to gank, because a lot of Rengar's power comes from just going out and getting that insta-burst assassin kill and then translating that into more and more kills, and just becoming sort of the nightmare of carries, whether it be AP or AD carries. So I mean, if this is something that works for your buddy, if you can get a ton of money, yeah, sometimes being able to finish an item other than a jungling item can be better, but I'd say for the most part, finishing off that jungle smite is the safer route to go, just because Warrior Enchant's really solid on it, like standing on its own in the early game regardless. And then you're also getting the added benefit out of the utility from whatever smite that you choose, whether that be Stalkers or Rangers.
And Horse is answering in chat.
Right. I was just
He
gonna
plays
say
Rengar a lot.
right, because we don't really play Rengar. He has a really good explanation here. He said the only reason you skip Trailblazer is for 40% cooldown with boots, Brutalizer, Masteries, and Runes at 2.3k gold. If that's not the goal, or you don't snowball with 40%, Warrior is better. Or skip Warrior, you go Trailblazer, CDR, Brutalizer. Sorry, I read his error. So if you don't snowball with 40%, then you go Trailblazer, CDR Boots, and Brutalizer. But he does play a lot of Rengar jungle.
He plays
and
a ton of Rengar,
so
and he's a monster.
He has a lot of knowledge.
Yeah.
So I would go with that answer. But I do know that at one point it was popular to go Doran's Blade, so he may just be stuck in, people get stuck in old metas.
Yeah, it becomes a situation where people get not just stuck in old metas, but they consider the old meta as almost gospel, regardless of how the game changes around it. So hopefully this isn't one of those situations, but Horse Doctor's answer is pretty good. And again, I'll defer to his expertise since he plays a ton of Rengar.
Here's how you get the 40%. He mentions 10% runes, 5% masteries, and then with the boots and brutalizer is 40%. That's all you need.
He does
for the CDR.
also
And he says
mention-
it's super risky.
Right.
So if you're not a god at Rengar, just go Warrior.
Yeah, you want to typically
There
go
you go.
tank. You want to go tank Rengar out of the jungle unless you're like like he put it a Rengar god.
Yeah.
That is gonna come out and annihilate everybody.
And Rengar's hard to
Because
play.
You're stabby
Yeah.
tabby. That's what
Yep.
you are. You stab things.
Yep.
Got to use that ferocity. And the only way to build it is with CDR.
I'm
I much
glad
rather
Horse
prefer
came in at the
Tank
right
Rengar.
time. Thank you for your help.
Yeah, we love you, Horse.
Punch
Dog. You're
hates
the best.
Rengar. Punch has
Hey,
nightmares
Punch,
about Rengar.
Punch.
I
Why?
have
Why?
issues with Rengar too. I think any bot laner does.
Punch. Why
Let's
do you?
be
Why do you
real.
hate Rengar so much, buddy? You have some nightmares.
I mentioned this on Monday's podcast, but I think the last time I played against a Rengar, I had 15 deaths on Ashe. It was pretty gross.
You're
Pretty gross.
playing Ashe too, so that does not help versus Rengar.
No, it doesn't.
This is your worst nightmare.
That was totally my fault. I should have picked Urgot. And then maybe died 7 times instead. Significant improvement.
Oh, we're God. All right, so do we have time for one more? Let's do one more.
All right.
Let's do one more.
Somebody read it.
We got Matt here asking, I'm a top/jungle main in high silver, and I find that many times my team has no idea how to take objectives. We win a team fight, and my team instantly backs instead of taking the nearest tower or picking up dragon, no matter how much I ping. This often contributes to us throwing the game eventually. So, what do I do when my team refuses to cooperate? I played a lot of tankier junglers and top laners, Malphite, Volibear, etc. So it's not like I can really solo dragon or push down towers without my team. That's his first part. So, top or jungle, main and high silver. And just reading this question, I don't see a lot of ownership in it. The first thing you have to do, it's the common my team, because you're looking at how it's matching you and what your team is doing. You're trying to do the right thing. They're not doing it. Maybe it goes back to what we said before, where everyone doing the wrong thing is better than you doing the right thing and everyone else doing the wrong thing. You know, jump on the same page, whatever they're doing. Maybe try to suggest like you're doing with the pings.
Yeah, if you're pinging and they're not following up, I mean, they usually have a pretty good idea.
Don't go alone
for not
and just
doing
die.
that. I mean, not everyone's an idiot. You know, a lot of people know or have a pretty good idea, or at least will follow orders if you ping something out and they go, oh, hey, yeah, we should take that turret. So, I mean, I can't imagine this happens all the time, or if it does, then there's reason for it. Maybe they just picked up a really big item and they need it for the next team fight, or they're just too low.
I almost feel like I see the opposite of this in the majority of my games, in that as soon as the team takes something and they're around dragon and it's up, it's harder to talk them out of starting something. When
You're
even-
also, and this is silver,
true, that's
and there's
true.
a huge difference in like the awareness between gold and silver and bronze. And like I'm sure we've all experienced, well, except for Chira, who's never been out of gold.
I've a
But
gold
we've
one
all,
king
the rest
forever.
Of us have been in, the rest of us have been
I've been
in
in
silver.
silver.
Like
Been
it's
where
a
you at.
pretty common thing.
I'm platinum
But
threes.
I
Come
would
on.
just one thing that you can do is when you bat, like if you see that happen, then when you back, then make a plan. Be like, okay, guys, next kill we get, we're gonna take dragon.
Yeah.
And then when they ping it, then they're aware of it ahead of time.
Right.
Because once you get kills and people start backing, they're in shop. They're like window shopping. They're trying to figure out which shoes will look good with their dress. And they're not going to respond. They probably don't even see your pinging or
Don't
pay
worry about
attention to it until they come back to lane. They're in base buying already. So if you give people a plan ahead of time, they're more likely to follow up on it.
And to go with that, also pay attention to timers too, like dragon timer.
Mm-hmm.
Point out if there's a minute left for dragon, because that's a good time
Oh,
to prepare
yeah.
for dragon. If they need to shop, then they should do
Good
it
point.
now.
When you see it's up and you're pinging, everybody go. You know, it's already up. It's already kind of a scramble, a rush. Everyone's, picking up what they got. They're packing up their gear and going. Whereas, like Punch was saying here, if it's going to be up, you give them a little warning. Hey, dragon's coming up. Let's go over there and prepare. And you start running over there. Do the little I'm going here ping and start hoofing it. So maybe that'll help you a little bit. How you communicate the information might be a problem, because it's the 4/9 rule, as Horse was saying. You know, there are still 10 players in the game. You know, if everybody on your team happens to be the idiot, that's not how it's supposed to work, and chances are that's not how it's working. So you kind of need to reevaluate and look, okay, maybe not everyone on my team is an idiot, and I shouldn't go into it thinking that they're all dumb and don't know what to do.
Also,
Maybe
pay
I should go
attention
into it thinking they do have somewhat of an idea, and I can give a little bit of guidance.
And pay attention to how many pings you're using, because it can happen that if you use too much pings and you just spam pinging, people will just start
Right.
ignoring you.
Right.
There
It
are
just gets
also
annoying,
two.
and everyone's like, "Oh, this guy's an ass. I'm not gonna do what he says."
There are two other things too that will help significantly for people to listen to you. One, you can't suck. Like if you go 0 and 12, nobody's listening to you. Like you have to be playing the game well. And I don't mean like on a whole, but like if you're having a bad game, people aren't going to be as likely to listen to you or take your calls. And two, you have to be upbeat. Like if you started the game by telling someone they're a scrub or GG, first blood, or
By
you know,
ruining
something like
someone's
that,
fun.
right, then they're gonna be like, fuck off. And they're not, even if they know it's the right thing, they're not going to do it because they don't want to make you happy. So you have to make sure you're positive and you have to make sure that you're playing decently. Like, you don't have to be 12 and 1, but you also can't be 1 and 12.
I hope that helps a little bit. It can be frustrating, and I see where you're coming at here. You think you're doing all the right things, and for the most part, I'm sure as a tank in the team fight, you're trying to tank and soak up damage, and it's frustrating because you do rely on your team to do everything. And if everyone's playing their own little mini games over here, it's hard to get everyone to wrangle up all those kids in the daycare and get them to do something that you want. But hopefully these tips help. I like Punch said, give them some time, give them a little bit. Keep an eye on timers yourself and say, okay, it's coming up now. Let's all start heading there. Or I'm backing and then I'm going straight to drag, etc. So give them a little bit of time. Maybe they'll see it, and don't inundate with puns because that will, or pins, pings, because sorry, I got puns.
You know what? Don't
that
inundate.
will bring them.
Don't inundate with puns
That
or
will-
pings.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you can inundate with puns,
Don't do it.
but not pings, because then they'll just get lost in the sea of everything. So.
All right. Well,
He has a part 2, which we will touch on next time, Matt. I'm sorry.
yeah. Well, and
We're out of time.
I think Adam's played more Echo than anybody else too, so that'll go along with his question anyway.
Oh.
But
One last thing that we didn't cover, watch the later this week on the T-Force Network Reddit page, because we are going to have a straw poll for the mid and the ADC in the next few days. So if you want to help choose, we're going to have like 3 different choices. You can help select who our next people are going to be for Champion Select. You can vote whether you are or are not a Patreon member already. So like if you plan on subscribing in July and you want to get these episodes, then you can go ahead and you can vote on them. Then that way you have some say on it. Or even if you don't and you just want to help vote anyway. Yeah, that's definitely something that will be going on later this week.
Adam did mention on Monday that he plans on putting together a kind of a teaser episode of the Champions League
Yeah.
podcasts that have been out so far.
Right.
So I mean,
That's
that could
right.
be another reason. If you want to get a little bit of insight to whatever champion you choose in the voting process, then you can wait for that teaser episode and listen for it then.
And if you did subscribe to Patreon, then check your email, because we sent out the Morgana one, and we had Raken on, and he's the #1 Morgana, like well regarded in that role.
Well,
so
we'll say he
was
knows what
really
he's doing.
fun. He was,
Yeah.
but he not
It was
only
good.
that, like he was a pretty cool guy. Like when you bring people on that you haven't spoken to a lot and you haven't podcasted with, like you never know if people are gonna freeze. But he was a pretty cool guy. He had a lot of insight. He didn't have any problems joking around or talking with us or sharing insight. So yeah, it was really good.
All right. Well, I think that'll do it for episode 269 of the Trinity Force podcast. Remember, if you have something that you want to add to our mailbag, or you just have a question, comment, whatever, email us at feedback@trinityforcepodcast.com. And anyway, episode should be out on Friday, and we will be recording again next Monday. So we love you guys. Thank you for all the donators, all the Patreon
Thanks,
patrons,
guys.
everything. Have a great
Bye.
night.
Thank you very much.
Guys.
See ya.
See you later.
Thank you.